Welcome to year 2 of A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by 4-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Bates and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, MLB's winningest pitcher in 2003,
Russ Ortiz.
My brother Frankie. Look at those bulbs, man. I like those cheetahs you got on today.
Yep.
They're all right.
These are my Lou Wasserman glasses. Do you know who Lou Wasserman is?
No.
Lou Wasserman was the tuto de capo de tutos of all the agents in Hollywood. He was the most powerful man in Hollywood throughout the
40s,
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
70s, 80s, and 90s, huh?
2000s.
And he was like the big agent.
He was the biggest.
Like Irving Lazar? Is that
Irving Lazar.
Irving Lazar, yeah.
Yeah.
He was the big one in the 40s, right?
Yeah. Well, they were all about the same time. But Lou Wasserman was the king.
All you need
So
is
now that I've what did I say? Titillated Derek to put these glasses on. I'll take them to fuck off.
Yeah, don't have a wardrobe malfunction on us when you start talking about tits. I'm kind of worried one don't pop out. You know.
I was hoping you pulled one out.
No. Well, you see one, you see the other one.
No. Our guest today is Russ Ortiz, who was the 2003 National League leader in games won, 21 games. Won in 2003, and he pitched in the 2003 All-Star game. This being All-Star Week in LA coming up, July 15th, July 19th, All-Star Week in LA.
So is this just fortuitous or an accident that we happen to have him on All-Star Weekend? Or was there
it's not an accident that he's not on Super Bowl weekend. You notice we had Kenny Anderson on Super Bowl weekend. Now try to talk calmly because we're just talking like we're talking, as opposed to how Derek says we usually talk.
I feel like I'm being leashed here.
Have you ever been to an All-Star game?
No, I've never been to an All-Star game. I probably couldn't get in for nothing. That's probably why I didn't go. But I did go. I used to go to those old-timer games, but they used to have a thing with the Journal-American. It was for Sandlot baseball. And they have it at Yankee Stadium. It was the old-time fighters against the old-time baseball players. And they played like 3 innings of softball, you know. But that was really cool. And even in the staff...
Who would play?
Huh?
Who would play for the fighters?
Well, I can't remember who was on the field, but in my experience, I was probably about 8, 9 years old. And somehow my old man got me tickets right behind the third base dugout. And I was sitting with a bunch of old fighters, and I was, like I said, maybe I was 8, 9, around there. But I was a big fight fan when I was a kid. Were you a big fight fan when you were a kid?
Yeah, I used to watch the Gillette Friday night fights, Saturday night fight. Which were they? One of the two.
Yeah, Friday night fight of the week, Gillette. As a matter of fact, I watched.
Now you, Derek.
I remember when Oswald got killed and they mentioned that it was the first nationwide coverage of a murder. But actually, I saw Benny Kid Paret get killed on TV when Griffith killed him on television. And I was, I guess, maybe 9 or 10 years old, but I'll never forget it because, Paret was taking a beating and he got his arms caught in the top of the rope. And, of course, there was no love lost between the two of them. Griffith hated him, because Paret had called him a maricon.
He had called him a maricon.
Maricon, yeah. And, he hated him, but
he didn't mean to kill him.
When you're a fighter, you hit the guy until he goes down.
Yep. And people, whether you realize it or not, when you fall down, it's a defense mechanism. It saves your ass, because he couldn't fall down. He was caught in the ropes. So that was your defense mechanism from blacking out drunk?
Falling down.
Falling down.
That's why Arizona was a bad place to live. You always fall into the cactus. You don't want to fall into the cactus. But anyway, when Paret got killed.
Russ Ortiz lives in Arizona.
You remember Don Dumphy?
Sure.
The voice of the Friday Night Flight of the Weeks? I'll never forget it. When the doctor went into the ring and everything, they examined Paret, who later, as you know, died. And Don Dumphy said, I just got the nod from the doctor. Paret will be up and around in a minute. Talk about a mistake. But anyway, I'm sitting in the third row behind third base. And I was sitting next to Dick Tiger, who didn't speak English very well. I don't know why, but he didn't speak English
He
very
was
well.
born in Nigeria.
Well, there you go. They don't speak English in Nigeria, apparently.
No, look at Derek shaking his head.
So I said to
Actually,
Tiger,
they do, but okay, go ahead.
well, they didn't then.
Okay.
It's way back when. So Tiger,
What's so funny, Billy?
I said to Tiger, I said, I hope you beat Fulmer. And he says, if they ever gives me a shot. But the middleweight division in them days was terrific. They were great fighters.
Yep.
But so I was sitting next to Tiger, and behind me was Two-Ton Tony Galento. Now, you really had to be a fight fan to know who Two-Ton Tony Galento was.
I know who Two-Ton Tony Galento was.
Well, but he knocked down Joe Louis.
He
He
did.
got his ass kicked by Joe Louis, but he knocked down Joe
Yep.
Louis. And I swear to God, I says, the kid was with me. I says, I don't even know who it was, but it was another kid my age from the neighborhood. And I says, hey, that's Two-Ton Tony Galento. He says, who's that? I said, he knocked down Joe Louis. And you know what Two-Ton Tony Galento says to me? Get this kid a hot dog and a soda. He says, he remembers who I was. He remembers I knocked down Joe Louis. Get this kid a hot dog and a soda. So that was kind of cool.
And you took a hot dog and a beer instead.
If I would have got one, I would have. Believe me, in them days, at 9 years old, I was already sipping drinks out of my father's cocktails. Like my father had me, he'd have people over the house and say, go outside and make 2 rye highballs, scotch and soda, and I'd make them, and I'd be knocking them off before I put them back into the room. Yeah. Matter of fact, my father told me when I was a kid. Remember the jumble that used to be in the Daily
Yeah.
News?
Letters.
Yeah, the letters. You
Yeah.
figure out the 5 clues, jumble them up, put
Right.
the words. If it was a real tough one, my father said, and I was maybe 8, 9, you do the jumble today. If you could do that jumble, you could have a whole can of beer. And I'd work on that jumble, man. I'd be saying, yeah, I got to get that jumble. I got a whole can of beer. That was like, I don't think it was a big deal for immigrants, like the Irish in general. There's a liqueur for everything to fix everything. Like my grandmother would say, well, not my grandmother, my mother. I got a sore throat. You know what's good for that now? Blackberry brandy.
Oh. Blackberry brandy.
Oh, you got a cold coming on? Rock and rye is good for that. Or, the child's anemic? Take Guinness and mix it with the milk. It'll fatten the child up. There was a liquor for everything. So in Germany, they feed babies beer, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, they do.
I've never been a baby in Germany.
That's your misfortune.
You're-
Yeah, I mean, the booze was just a way of life with us. I know, a can of beer was a big deal for me at 8, 9 years old. But the old fighters were great, man. And they didn't stop the fights in them days like they do now, which I guess was
Well, I
bad.
wonder why.
Betty,
The kid Perret.
ask Mrs. Perret how she
Yeah.
feels about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've had enough of our talking today. Let's get Russ Ortiz on the phone.
Who has been to an All-Star game or two?
He has been to an All-Star game for sure. Derek, can we get Russ?
Si, senor.
All right, Derek, can you bring on former 21-game winner in 2003 and National League All-Star pitcher Russ Ortiz? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great.
And that's Billy O'Connor, and that's Derek Harris,
Hey, guys.
third man in the
How
booth.
are you, Russ? Thanks for coming on, pal.
So-
Pleasure to meet you.
So
Real
good to have
pleasure.
you.
Thanks for having me.
You got your OU shirt on?
Yeah,
Super
the
sad.
OU baseball teams. Yeah, they're in the World Series, so
Yeah.
College World Series.
You pitched in the '94 World Series, didn't you?
We played. Yeah, I didn't get to pitch that year. We won the national championship in '94. We went back in '95, and I got to pitch in that one.
How exciting was that?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, high school. We did really well in high school, and at the time that was the biggest moment in my baseball career. Then you get to college, and look forward to getting to Omaha. And when you actually do, that becomes the biggest deal. And then when you actually get to the championship game, and I got to warm up, so I almost got in the championship game, but we did so well throughout I got to pitch 4 innings in the regional to help us get to the championship game in the regional, and then we did so well in the College World Series that it was an incredible experience. I mean, the best thing, up until 2002 when I went to the World Series with the Giants, it was the greatest and
Really?
best experience of my life. Yeah.
Who were some of your teammates on that Oklahoma team?
Our top pitcher is Mark Redmond. He had a good, I think, 10, 11 year career in the major leagues, and he was a number one first rounder. And then we had Damon Minor and Ryan Minor, the twins, 6'7" twins. And Ryan actually took over for Cal Ripken Jr. when he ended his streak. So he was playing with Baltimore at the time, and he's the one that replaced Cal Ripken Jr. in the lineup. And so that's kind of a little trivia question right there.
Wow.
Well, you were a reliever in college, so I mean, actually, it was kind of good that you didn't get the pitch in the first World Series because they didn't need you, right? I imagine.
Right. Yeah, I did everything. I mean, I did long relief, short relief, started, I closed. So I did everything. And so I was, that year, I would say I probably did more long relief, if I remember right, than anything. And so I think I was warming up towards the end of the game because we were winning 13-5, I think, at the time. And so I was warming up before we would have brought in our closer, who was dominant. And so I think if one more hitter got on base, I may have come in, but we got out of the inning.
Well, hang on a second, Russ. There's sort of something bleeding through your background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the little punching guy.
We have Derek for that.
I'm going to ask you an offbeat question. Your best pitch in college, was that the same best pitch that you had in the pros, or did you develop a pitch that your go-to pitch in the pros?
I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing for me was that my ball had a natural cut on it, but everybody would tell me that it was a heavy ball. So just the way that I released the ball, the extension I got, all that stuff, it was a heavy ball. And so that was the biggest thing for me. And I didn't realize, I guess, how important that was until I got to college. And when guys told me that my ball was heavy. And so
what does that mean? What does that mean, Russ? A heavy ball?
Yeah.
So it just means that like it has some extra life to it at the end. Like say the last half between the pitcher's mound and home plate, it just has like some extra life on the ball. Because a lot of times pitchers will throw a pitch and it will be, let's just say it was 92 miles an hour. And so it'll be 92 miles an hour, and then but there's no extra jump to it. And so I think it's really hard to explain like how that all transpires, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm like, for me to understand that was a big deal, because that meant that, I was always told that I had a smooth delivery and the ball came out of my hand really nice. And so when I knew that ball jumped, that meant that it comes out of my hand nice and smooth, but then it seems to pick up speed towards the end.
Like Rod Carew told me that Nolan Ryan could overpower him with a fastball because it had a little zip on the end. It's sort of like Rose. Is that what it means? It had a little zip. It had a little rise on the at the end of explosion.
So that's a good way to put it. That there, it feels like the ball just kind of explodes right towards the end, and so you're getting ready to time it out, and then the ball seems to pick up speed, and which contributed for me, I think, over my career, it contributed a lot of foul balls.
Really?
For me, which was frustrating because guys try to time it, and then it would seem to like pick up speed, and they're just a hair late, but not late enough to swing and miss, but. So it contributed, I think, to a lot of foul balls, and which maybe sometimes throw a lot more pitches.
Well, I remember I went to a game once when Ryan was pitching against Tanana, and it was a lot of foul ball. I was sitting up in the press box, and the press box was like a bomb squad, because they fouled off a lot of pitches straight up behind. They were just missing the pitches because they were both fireballers, and that was an indication of how hard they were throwing, I believe. Was that the case with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same. I mean, as I went through college and got into the minor leagues, my velocity just kept going up and up and up, and so I would consider myself essentially, one of the late bloomers, meaning that I had the skills and the pitches and all that stuff, but then for me to fully mature into my body and gain the strength and stuff. All through college, I just got stronger and stronger. And then once I got to the minor leagues, just continued to get stronger and then started to throw harder. And then with the way that I threw the ball, the action that it had on it, I think that's the thing that helped me continue to climb up the ladder compared to other guys, because I hid the ball well, meaning when the ball came out of my glove and you come up and make that, arm circle, that I hid the ball behind my body really well. And so, I was able to have the ball kind of shoot out, and the hitter didn't have as much time to react. And then plus with the extra life on the ball, made it very difficult sometimes for hitters if they didn't see the ball very well. Of course, there's guys that had no problem seeing the ball off me and did really well. But that was one of the things that I learned through college, and then really in the minor leagues, how to use that to my advantage. And that's really the thing that made me successful and have a good career, is understanding what my strengths were and using that to my advantage.
So you were drafted in the 4th round by the Giants in '95. It took you 3 years to make it up into the major leagues, correct? April 2nd, 1998, you made your debut in relief.
Right. Yeah.
How exciting was that for you, and what were your emotions like that day?
So that was, I think, the 3rd game of the series, the opening series against the Astros at the Astrodome. So one, being in the Astrodome was a huge deal. That's a big, iconic, stadium. And so when I got there, Dusty Baker, who was my manager at the time, he told me, "Hey, whenever you get in, just finish your warm-up pitches and just take a second to look around and just take it all in." And so I did that. I was super excited. I think I warmed up faster than I ever warmed up in my life, coming to the game. And so I finished my warm-up pitches, and I did. I stood behind the mound. I took a second. I looked all around and just, took it all in, just the whole experience. And I remember thinking, I was just like, I can't believe, I'm here. Like, this is, this is literally a dream come true. And to do it in an iconic stadium like the Houston Astrodome was even more special. And then the cool thing that Dusty told me was, once you do that, step on the mound, they announce the hitter, give the hitter his due because he's earned it, and then get to work. And, I love how Dusty put me in that position, because he's basically saying, like, look, enjoy the moment, take it all in. You've earned your right to be here. The hitter's earned the right to be here. And then just forget about that. And then because you have work to do. And that was the start of kind of a mentality that I always took every time out, is like, this is a fun experience. This is a dream come true every single day. And I appreciate it and never take it for granted. But then I have work to do. And so it helped me to actually really compartmentalize everything. Is that when I wasn't pitching, I just enjoyed everything. I studied hitters, et cetera, et cetera. I was a big fan of my teammates, big fan of baseball. But then when I was pitching, I had work to do. And so all the fun and all that was, it was there. But I had to focus on the task at hand. And I think that really helped me to help my team, earn a lot of wins.
So your first appearance, you took it all in, and then you went out and struck out the sides, right? So is that correct? You struck out the sides when you went out there in Houston, first time up?
I think so. I think I struck outside. I may have walked 2 people as well.
We won't mention that. You struck out the sides.
But
so the arm was a little heavier. The ball was a little heavier.
I was a little excited. I was very excited, and over anxious, and so. But I did strike out my first hitter, so that was a really cool moment to enter the big leagues and be able to strike out your first hitter, and that's something you remember forever.
Who was the first hitter?
His name was Sean Berry. Which crazy thing is, I played with his brother Mike at Oklahoma. And so we used to watch Sean play on TV. I think at the time he was with the Expos. And so we used to watch Sean play because Mike was our teammate. And so we got to see him plenty. The one thing I didn't study him, at all back then. But when I went to study the hitters, that first series, I remember, hey, that's Mike's brother, and so then he comes up to the plate first, and I was like, this is crazy. That's one of those things where you always hear the expression that it's a small world, and I mean that was a crazy instance, and so you better believe that I was really wanted to strike him out, because he was a guy that we watched on TV when we were at school.
So in the middle of the 98 season, you transitioned and you became a starting pitcher. Is that correct?
Right. Correct. Yes.
And then by 1999, you won 18 games as a starter and were 4th in the major leagues in wins. What was that like? How did you go to being a semi-anonymous pitcher to being an ace of the staff?
Well, they in '97 they transitioned me from a closer. That's how they drafted me, as a closer, and they transitioned me to a starter in '97. And so I pitched half season AA, half season AAA, and I had a little bit of success. But I went to spring training and did really well, and ended up making the team. I got called up on opening day that year, and so, but they had their rotation set, but they wanted me a part of the team. And so I actually went, I think, up and down to AAA. I went down and up to AAA, back to the big leagues, I think 3 times the first half of the season, because I would sit for about a week and not pitch. And then they said, look, we're going to send you down so you can make some starts, get some pitches in and stuff. And so I went down to Fresno, which was where the AAA was at the time. And I'd make about 3 or 4 starts, and then they call me back up because they need me, and then I might pitch an inning or 2 or whatever, and then get sent back down again to pitch. So they were grooming me to be a pitcher. And at the All-Star break, one of the starters went on the injured list, and they plugged me in there. And July 20th, 1998 was my first start. I remember that because that's my brother's birthday, and it was against the Diamondbacks, and I pretty much started every, for the next, maybe the next 7, 8 years, I pretty much, started every game, I think, except one, the next 8 seasons. And so I did okay that last half, and then, but I had a lot of confidence going into 99 and just did my job. Like I said, Dusty Baker gave me that advice, go to work. And so I had work to do, and my job was to start the game and finish the game and get a win. And so that was my mindset. And so I went out and just tried to do the best I could. And at the end of the year, ended up with 18 wins, and it was incredible. It was an incredible feeling.
Let me ask you, Russ. You mentioned now in '98 your first year you started as a pitcher, your starting pitcher, and you had to adjust. I guess you were like a 500 pitcher, 98 until 99 when you broke through and had 18-game winner. Do you think
Right.
an ERA or the amount of wins is a more definitive justification of how good a pitcher is? What do you think is the more accurate statistic? In other words, to judge a really good pitcher, the amount of games he won or his ERA?
I mean, I would say between those two, I would say ERA. But I think overall, you could have a great ERA and barely throw any innings and give up a lot of hits. And in my mind, I'm like, you're doing fine, but you're not doing great. So to me, the biggest barometer for a starting pitcher to me is, number one, how many innings you throw. Number two, how many hits per 9 innings you give up. And the next thing would be, ERA, and then wins would come forth. But I do think wins are very important for a starter as long as you have the innings. If you don't have the innings, then wins don't really matter because you're not really helping to dictate the outcome of the game. If you're not throwing 6-7 innings, and you're throwing 4 1/3, 4 2/3, 5 innings, unless it's a blowout, you're not really helping to dictate the outcome of the game, most of the time. And so, but ERA obviously is a big deal because that means that you are giving your team, no matter if you throw 4, 5, 6, 7 innings, you're giving your team an opportunity to win. And so, the way my career always went was I would have, say, 3 good games, where I throw 6, 7 innings on average and give up maybe 3 runs in those games, 2 or 3 runs, pretty solid start, I guess what they would call a quality start and everything, but it was never good enough for me. I always want to put up zeros. But then I would have a game where I'd throw 4 innings and give up 7 runs. And it's just horrible. And then I get right back on the horse and come back and throw another solid game or a couple solid games. And then, so I would always seem to mix in these horrible games that doesn't help the ERA. And so that's how I always kind of looked at my career. Is I didn't look at my ERA so much. I looked at, how many innings did I throw? How many opportunities did I give my team to win? And then, how many team wins did we get? Not necessarily my wins on my win call, but, how many, team wins did we get? So like in 99, I know I helped contribute to more than 18 wins. And, I had 18 in my win column, but I was very confident that I, helped us to win probably 24 to 25 games by just giving us a chance, when I went out there.
Yeah, that's a great feeling to know that you did that you probably contributed to 25 games. And then, later on with Atlanta, you go 21-7. So that's
Yeah.
and was it always, you talked about the heavy ball before, and I'm still kind of fascinated by that. I guess we called it like a live arm, that the ball would explode to the plate. Was it always the fastball? Was that your best pitch in college and in the pros?
Yeah, that was definitely always my best pitch, and it had a natural cut to it. Anybody that knows baseball knows who Mariano Rivera is, and he had a ball that cut really nice. My ball didn't cut like that, but it was natural, like that, and so it had some late cut action to it, and where, say for instance, if I was throwing a ball inside to a right-hander, I would throw it in where it looks like it might hit them, and then it would cut in late and towards the inside part of the plate. And so it caused the hitter to freeze and either not swing or swing late, or it causes a player to see the ball in and guess and swing early and either pull it foul or swing and miss. And so, and then same thing if I was throwing a ball away to a right-hander, I would throw it on the outer part of the plate, and the hitter would see it, and then it would cut late. And so there was a difference between them hitting the ball on the sweet spot of the bat. Difference between that and hitting on the end of the bat. So difference between a home run and just a little blooper or pop up or even a ground ball, and so that's if I executed that well, then the hitters had to make a decision. They have to make a decision really fast anyways. I mean, from the time the ball leaves a pitcher's hand to it gets to the plate, I mean, the short amount of time that they have to make a decision is crazy. But then when you add in a late moving ball, like a cutter, like a sinker, like a slider, then that messes with the hitters. And so that was the thing I used to my advantage is that cutter. And that's really what got me to where I got to is because I didn't have any, extraordinary stuff. I mean, there was tons of guys that had way better pitches than me, that threw harder than me, that were nastier than I was. But, that's something that, like I said, once I learned about that and I used that to my advantage, that helped bring success and, longevity for me.
So, Russ, you give a lot of credit to Dusty Baker, but you played for a number of teams. You played for the Giants, the Braves, the Diamondbacks, the Orioles, the Astros, the Yankees, the Dodgers. What manager did you take the most from? And
Dusty for sure, but I mean, close to that, Bobby Cox. I mean, I got to play for Dusty Baker and Bobby Cox. Arguably two of the best managers ever, back to back. For my first 7-8 years of my career, I got to play for those two guys, and so it was a huge blessing. I mean, I couldn't ask for two better managers. Two better guys that love the game of baseball, passionate about the game of baseball, love their players, push their players, get the best out of them, and treated you like adults, like men, and didn't let up on you. And they would do everything they could to back you up, and so that breeds a lot of trust in your managers, and so I grew closest to Dusty. He saw me when I was just a baby in the game, and he helped. I mean, like I mentioned already, day one of my first game, he helped shape, kind of a mindset that I carried with me through the rest of my career.
2002 and 2003 would be big years in your career. You started the sixth game of the World Series, of the divisional series against the, I think the Mets. And then in 2003, you were a free agent and you signed with the Braves. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that year? Well, 2002, you were pitching against the Angels, correct? You had a five.
Yeah, so the World Series.
You had a 5-0 lead, and they pulled you, and you gave up 6 runs, and they lost the game and the series. How did you feel when Dusty took you out? When Dusty took you out?
So it's crazy. It's crazy to think how long. I mean, that's been 20 years now. I mean, that's crazy how fast time has flown by. That was 20 years ago, and but those are the things, like I mentioned before. A College World Series was the biggest thing for me ever in my baseball career, and then 2002 happened, and that will always stand out as the biggest thing for me. Baseball in my baseball career, and so it's something you remember at all times. And I just remember, I felt so locked in that whole game. And the first hitter of the inning was Garrett Anderson of the 7th inning. And that was the first time that I was like going in and out of my focus, and then he ended up grounding out to second base. And then I was like, okay, here we go again. And then I gave up just a basic single. Troy Gloss, who's a strong, huge man, just, hit a basic single to left. And so no biggie, it's better than a double or a home run, which he usually hits. And so the next hitter, with one out in the seventh inning is a lefty. His name is Brad Fulmer, who was actually my high school teammate, which is pretty crazy, And so
at Montclair Prep.
At Montclair Prep, yeah, we were teammates. He's a year younger than me, and so we were high school teammates
And that's
all through.
And that's where you met Tim Montes, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. That's where I met Tim, and Tim. Obviously, Frank, and he's the guy that helped set my whole pitching foundation. And so at Montclair Prep, Brad was my teammate and friend, and so, but I was like, he's a perfect candidate for a double play right here, and so it didn't. I wasn't bothered. It didn't bother me, that there was a guy on base, and I threw the right pitch to him. It just didn't get outside enough, and he hit a hard ground ball between first and second, and then that's when they took me out. And so, so even at that time, I was like, we have a 5-run lead. Scott Spezio's up. He's another great candidate for a ground ball double play, and that was my mindset, my thought process. And then there was kind of a break. Something was happening, and I look over, and Dusty's walking out, and I swear I saw him raise his hand to the bullpen already. So at that time, I was like, well, I'm out of the game. So if he would have come and talked to me, like I said, I was like, well, I'm out of the game. Then that's when I started to hear the crowd. That's the year where they had these stupid thunder sticks and the monkey jumping around and stuff. And so that was the first time actually that whole game that I heard the crowd. And so honestly, if Dusty would have just come and talked and said, hey, you just want to give you a break and all that stuff, it would have been really hard to get that focus back, because the whole game I didn't hear the crowd. And then that was the first time I heard how loud it was. And to try to get that back would be really hard. And so, so it might have been, it's kind of a good thing he did take me out. But yeah, he just said good game and all that stuff. And then I see his hand raised. And so later on, I was like, man, I swear I saw his call to the bullpen before. Maybe he didn't. And so I was like, darn it, maybe I could have talked myself into staying in the game, but I had already kind of set in my mind I was out. So at that time, it was like, hey, great job and all that stuff. And I was like, hey, thanks. Okay. And I just gave him the ball and walked off, and not thinking anything of it, because we had such a great bullpen that it was like, why, we have 5-0 lead with 1 out in the 7th. We're going to win this thing. And, he stops me, he grabs me and he hands me the ball, and he's like, hey, just wants you to, to keep that. I can't remember exactly what he said, but this is for you, keep this and all that stuff. And he was just giving me a memento, to remember the moment by. And, because he was like, how many guys get to pitch in the World Series? And he's like, I just wanted you to make sure you had something. And then I really thought about it. I was like, how many pitchers can actually say that they have the actual ball that they pitched in a World Series game with, and potentially, a winning game. And so, and I was like, that's a cool memento. And so it was made out to be a bigger deal than it was, but but I was just like, we're going to win this thing. This is unbelievable. And then the 3-run home run happened, and I was like, wow. Angels are known for being a great comeback team, and so he was like, all right, well, let's hold on to our seats here. This could get exciting, and unfortunately, yeah, we lost.
So let me ask you, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what it was like to be a teammate of Bonds and Billy's favorite, Willie Mays. Did you have much exposure to Willie Mays?
Oh yeah, he was that. I tell people all the time. I'll talk about Willie first, but I tell people all the time, spring training, during the season, Willie Mays, Juan Marichal, Willie McCovey, I mean, those guys were in the clubhouse all the time. I mean, just hanging out. Like, it wasn't like some special moment. Hey guys, Willie Mays and them are coming by. You know, like it was a special thing. I mean, they were there all the time, just sitting around hanging out. And I was like, man, you really think about that. Think about that. Like, you know, you have these icons of the game just sitting, hanging, and you could go up to them anytime and say hello. And it was crazy. I'll tell you a quick funny story. My grandpa, who's a huge baseball fan, grew up, you know, and he watched Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and all those guys. So one of the days they were in San Francisco when he was alive. He was in San Francisco. I brought him into the clubhouse, and we walked by the office that Willie McCovey would hang out in. And I was like, hey, there's Willie McCovey. You want to meet him? He's like, sure. And so we go and meet him, and Willie McCovey was awesome to him and made him feel special. So then this was right after a game. And so then I bring him to my locker, and I was like, hey, I got to go, you know, get cleaned up and stuff like that. I'll be back. So after I'm coming back from, you know, the shower and all that stuff, he's sitting in my chair, and Willie Mays is like 2 chairs over, just sitting in someone else's chair. And, you know, at the time, my grandpa's probably 70 plus years old, and he's sitting there staring at Willie Mays like a 10-year-old kid would stare at Mike Trout, you know. And it was the coolest thing, you know, memory that's one of the coolest memories I have of my career is to see him, because you can tell it took him back to his younger days, you know, when he was watching Willie Mays. And so I was like, hey, you know who that is? And he's like, yeah. I go, you want to meet him? And he looks up at me. He's like, okay. And so we go right, introduce him, and Willie was talking to him, telling him how great it was to meet him. And he reaches in his pocket and he pulls out a Willie Mays watch, and he gives it to my grandpa as a gift. And I tell you what, my grandpa, one of the years I lettered at OU, they gave you a watch, so I gave it to him, and he wore that. He wore that out. Then later on, I think the Giants, I think we got a watch or something, so I gave that to him. He wore that out. And Willie Mays gave him a watch, a Willie Mays watch, and so he wore that pretty much for just about the rest of his life. And he wore it every day. And so it was a really cool thing, and incredible to have those icons of the game, you know, there and stuff. So, but that's a really cool moment. It's funny. It was just funny because, you know, just the way that he looked like a little kid and a little fan, you know, and the fact that Willie, for some reason, had a Willie Mays watch in his pocket and that he gave it to him. And then my grandpa wore it every single day pretty much for the rest of his life. Is, you know, it's pretty cool.
Well, your Giants training campus in Scottsdale, right in Arizona, is that right?
Yeah.
Scottsdale. I was out there and I missed Willie Mays by one day. And Frank will tell you, I grew up very much like your grandfather. If I saw Willie Mays, it would be more than unnerving. Let's put it that way. I would I'd be a 5-year-old kid again.
And how about Bonds?
So
pretty good teammate.
He was fine. I would say. So the thing I always tell people is, hardly anybody ever, you know, knows what it's like to be that huge of a superstar. And so I think I try to give him more of the benefit of the doubt, and, you know, not that he was mean or anything. He was just on his own. He just by himself, you know, and so he had his own little space, you know, in the locker room, and I mean, there was media around him or trying to get around him constantly, and so he had his own little space. So there was a whole big thing about his chair and TV, and that, you know, all that stuff is like the area that he had his chair and his TV was in an area where when the media comes and gathers around him, it doesn't bother anybody else. So that was kind of always misrepresented, that they're always talking about him in his chair and his TV and all that stuff. Well, it was in that specific area, and he had all that room to do all that because he was placed there specifically, whether he wanted to or the Giants just did it, but specifically so when the media gathers around him, it doesn't bother anybody else. And so, because the amount of press that would go to interview him and ask questions, if you had the locker to the right or to the left of him, you could never get in your locker. And so, so that was always misrepresented. But it was one of those things like he didn't, I guess, interact with, the team like most of us interacted with each other. But he was always great to me from day one. He was great to me. And, so he would come in the clubhouse, if it's a day game, he'd get his food and stuff like that. And just like we would, and then just, whether he'd eat it in the kitchen area or he'd go to his chair and then he'd just go out and do his thing. And it was like, well, we don't need him to necessarily interact with us all the time. As long as he goes out, and he's just Barry and does his thing, that's great. We have 24 other guys on the roster to interact with. And so, but to be a superstar in his level, I mean, he's the best hitter I've ever seen. Probably the quickest hands I've ever seen, the best hitter to recognize a pitch that I've ever seen. And, but like I say, he just didn't interact much with the team. Off the field, when he wasn't in the baseball arena, off the field, he was great. I mean, he would be talkative and all that stuff, and he was great. And so, but like I said, he treated me really well. He helped me out a few times throughout my career, and he was always really nice to my family and all that. And so, so I just would say he just didn't interact. I think if he would have interacted more, and he may have interacted with more hitters and pitchers than I realized, but I'll just say from what I saw, I think he could have interacted and helped more pitchers and hitters, but he may have, and I just don't know. But I mean, you want to talk about? I mean, as far as offense wise, like I don't think there's ever been anyone like him.
But you talk about about recognizing a pitch quickly and his quick hands, and I mean, hitting 73 homers obviously is remarkable, and remarkable even more so how many times he got walked. I mean, they used to walk him all the time.
Yeah.
But of course, the naysayers are going to point to the juice.
Right.
How good could you have been if you took juice? I mean, it never crossed your mind? I mean, what could have happened to you had you have taken juice? I mean, could you have been like you talked about the Oklahoma pitcher that was dominant? Did he ever make it to the pros? The guy who was dominant in college. You know what I mean?
He did. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I didn't necessarily need to throw harder. If that's what, if I was to take it to throw harder, I didn't necessarily need to throw harder. So, I was plenty strong. I was, my arm barely got sore. My body barely got sore, the day after I pitched. And I didn't miss a day, for like my first 8 years, I think. And then, when I signed with the D-backs and all of a sudden my side started hurting and then eventually found out I had a stress fracture in my rib. So
you didn't need it.
So I didn't need it. Yeah. I didn't need, any of that. And then plus, I was successful and I was really helping the team a lot. And so, so it wasn't anything that crossed my mind, but and I wasn't at the age yet to where it's like, okay, I need to keep this going. And So I don't know. I don't know if it would have helped me. I worked out just about every day, but I wasn't like some crazy workout guy. Like, I ran a lot. I maintained everything. So I don't know if it would have made me necessarily any stronger. I mean, I think mostly for guys that are kind of on the cusp of a roster, and guys that maybe are coming back from an injury.
Wow. Yeah.
Guys that just need 2 or 3 more miles per hour on their fastball, then that would take them to another level. I mean, those guys. And so, but I felt like, I didn't run in those circles for one of guys that juice. So I didn't really know much about it, but it didn't even cross my mind, because I was like, I feel great. I'm doing well. I'm helping the team. It's not even necessary. So, I always tell people, like, I would just, my performance enhancing, thing was eating a good steak dinner the night before I pitched, and Starbucks pretty much was the thing that did it for me.
So after the 2002 season, you got traded to the Braves?
Yeah, traded, yeah.
Wow. How did well, I'm sure you must have had mixed feelings, because you were leaving one perennial winner but moving to a team that had Maddox, Smoltz, Chipper, Sheffield, etc. Perennial all-stars. And you really blossomed under Leo Mazzoni. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I get a call from my agent saying that the Giants general manager, Brian Sabian, is trying to get a hold of me, and that I need to call him. And I'm like, okay. And literally at that point in time, especially coming off the World Series, and, I had a really solid year and all that stuff. And I was always under the impression that and this is how naive I guess I was, but I was always under the impression that if you're successful in helping your team year after year after year, that they're going to keep you. And I didn't understand, like, at that time I had value, or that from the business end, maybe they got everything they wanted out of me because I had value. Now they're going to try to get other people to fit pieces, that they maybe thought that they were missing, or, and then plus, guys they had coming up from the minor leagues and all that stuff, like I didn't even think about any of that stuff. I just worried about doing my job, and that was it. So when he told me to call Brian Sabian, I didn't know what it was about. I didn't even have a thought. And so, but he told me that, I want to let you know that we traded you to Atlanta. And it was almost like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I couldn't, I didn't really know what to say. And he thanked me for everything I've done, and and all that, and was great. And I hung up the phone, and I was just like dumbfounded, like, because like I was telling you, that I thought that I would be in a Giants uniform my whole career as long as I was producing, and so I was just floored, but pretty quickly I realized, like, okay, it's not like I'm going to some bottom of the pile team. I was going to the Atlanta Braves, pitching mecca for pitchers, and so I guess I got over it pretty quickly, realizing that I'll get to pitch with Maddox and Smoltz, and get to be teammates with guys like you mentioned, Chipper and Sheffield and Andrew Jones, and and all those guys. I mean, there's just tons of perennial all-stars. So so then I got really excited. At first I was bummed, I was confused and all that stuff, and then it didn't take long for me to be very excited and look forward to that. And then I went to Atlanta, and one of the greatest things that I think helped me to go and have my best year, the very first year, was I came in. The teammates said they talked to me about how much they disliked me because I I helped win 2 games against the Braves in the divisional series the year before in 2002. And so I pitched the first game and the 5th game, and we won both of them. And to hear that they didn't like me very much after that was, I think, a huge compliment for me, because you're talking about the Braves, and so that boosted my confidence. Bobby Cox, Leo Mazzoni both said, "Hey, you're here because of, we like you." And that's one thing my agent said. He's just like, "Look, this is not the Giants getting rid of you. This is the Braves wanting you." And so I looked at it that way. And then once Bobby Cox and Leo said, "Hey, we love that you're here, and we just want you to go out and do your thing," and that was it. And then the teammates were like, "Hey, we win here. Like, we're expected to win, and we expect to win. And pretty much the rules are you come in, you be prepared, and you go out and win." And I was like, this is awesome. And so yeah, that was like first day spring training stuff. And I was like, all right, this is my kind of team. And we were expected to win. And I love that feeling, because we had the same feeling in San Francisco. It's that, we expect ourselves to win. So, and then Leo was great. He and I talked extensively about how I think and how he thinks, and what I do best. And he just stayed on me. And, but he was very honest. And, if I had these thought processes that were irrational or unnecessary, he would tell me. He's like, "Why are you thinking that way?" And I was trying to explain it to him. He goes, "Get rid of that. That's dumb. You don't need all that." And so I loved how he was just straightforward, that we can get to the root of it and then get rid of it, and then do the right things. And yeah, so for those 2 years, I was able to, personally, I was able to, to win 36 games in those 2 years. And but the thing was helping the team win as many games as possible. And but unfortunately, we had such great teams. Unfortunately, we never made it out of the divisional series, and that was, I think for all of us, those 2 years especially were huge disappointments, because we expected ourselves to, especially in 2003, to win the World Series. We had such a great team.
Well, in 2003, you led the major leagues in wins. That must have been very gratifying. And then on July 15th, you made your first appearance in an All-Star game. What was it like? What was it like to walk out in the 5th inning against the American League All-Stars?
It was incredible. I mean, that whole experience is, when you look at it in perspective, you're just like, I'm considered this year one of the best pitchers, in the game. And, you're being awarded by being selected to the All-Star team. And I was like, this is incredible, because I've spent, I don't know my whole life, as long as I can remember, watching every single All-Star game, that was played on TV. And so to actually be there, and being, recognized as one of the best for that year is pretty special and exciting. And I tell you what, though, the first 2 days, you're doing so much stuff, and you're just anxious to get to the game. Like, let's just start the game, because there's so many other things going on that are really special. But you're just like, we just want to play the game, and so once they kind of mapped it out, like, hey, this is what we're thinking. And when I was told that I was going to start the 5th inning, those same kind of feelings of being a rookie, first outing, kind of came back. And
you flash back to the did you flash back to the Astrodome for your first appearance?
For sure. Well, one of the things from that experience was that I learned from that experience, like, how to warm up. When I get that excited, how to warm up properly so I don't, overdo it and tire myself out. But yeah, so it definitely felt the same kind of feelings that I did, in my first outing in Astrodome. And so, yeah, and I wanted to show off. I wanted to show off and show my team and the fans, my family, all that stuff, like, that I belong here. And so I think I ended up striking out 2 and walking 2. I didn't give up any runs. I don't think I gave up any hits, but
you walked 1.
But yeah,
you walked 1.
I walked 1.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that was Ichiro that I walked. He was tough, man. Gosh, he was scary too because he had a lot of power, but he's so good. But
who
yeah,
who are the 2 that you struck out?
Jorge Posada and Carlos Delgado.
Not too bad, guys.
Yeah.
My
and
question
so,
is, did you hear the crowd? Did you hear the crowd that night?
yeah, for sure.
You did. So you weren't.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was a little more experienced, so I could, I was able to do both. I was able to, and plus it's an exhibition game. Even though you still get locked in, you still have
that was the first game that counted, though, wasn't it? First, also.
Yeah, it was the first game that counted. Yeah. So
you were playing for home field advantage.
Yeah, which was of course something we talked about in the locker room before, that just how important it could be for any National League team. And so, but it's a 5th inning. There's still a lot of game after the 5th inning. So, I guess I didn't think about that particular thing when I pitched. I just wanted to be able to put up a 0 and perform well, and be able to leave that experience with a great memory. And so, but one thing that was kind of neat, I guess, we were, I would have gotten the win, I believe. I was pitcher of record, and then, we ended up losing.
Who's only blown save? What was the Dodgers relief pitcher?
Yeah, Eric Gagne. Yeah, how about that? Eric is only blown save.
Only blown save of the year was that game.
Oh wow!
Right. Yeah, how about that?
The win. So, that's unbelievable.
I think I would have been. I would know as a pitcher of record. I don't know. I mean, because and when you're throwing that many guys like this, I think the scorekeeper is the one that determines like who's going to get the win. And I think Jason Smith pitched 2 innings, I believe, that day. And I think he did really well, and so they may have given it to him. So I think in those situations when it's lined up like that, I don't think necessarily the guy in the 5th inning, is supposed to get the win. I think it's a decision made by the scorekeeper, I believe. Well, so either way,
you went on to win 113 games in your career. Your career was actually cut short by a lot of injuries, because in the first 6 years of your career, or first 7 years of your career, you probably won 105 or so of the 113. And it must have been frustrating for you to be injured so often and move around so often once you were injured. But what did you take away from your long career?
Gosh, I mean, I think one of the biggest things I realize is in order to get to, the top of a sport, or to the pinnacle of anything, it not only takes a lot of years of practice and perfecting a craft, but it takes a lot of other people to be a part of that. And so I think, when I look back on my career, like I mentioned Tim Montez before, he literally was the guy that helped set my pitching foundation. And he and I worked really hard on it. And so I think back to all the people, all the coaches, even, I mean, my grandpa helped coach from T-ball all the way through pony baseball, and before I went to high school and played for my high school team, and he coached, and so my brother and other coaches and stuff throughout my career. Like I wouldn't have been able to do what I did and have such a nice career without all those people, and of course my family was super supportive, but as far as on-field stuff, you just realize like I just didn't do this on my own, as coaches and teammates and a lot of people that made it special. And so of course I'm proud of the things from all the things that I learned. I'm proud that I was able to go out and execute those enough to have a long career. And so I'm proud of myself for that. But at the same time, like, I just remember it was just a dream come true. And, there was plenty of people that I could thank that, to help get me there and help keep me there.
What are you doing these days?
So I've done a lot of things. I was really involved in the community and the cities that I played with, and I really enjoyed giving back. I really enjoyed helping with volunteer programs, stuff like that. So when I retired, I wanted to make sure that I did something that made an impact, a big impact, and so I actually started a small golf apparel brand because besides baseball, golf is my other love, the sport I love. And so I started a small golf apparel brand. I had that for 7 years, and we gave 100% of our proceeds to charity. And that was awesome. And I ended it this past year. But so I did that. I was an athletic director for 5 years for the school that kids go to. I've helped coach at that school. I've helped coach volleyball and basketball.
So you're giving
stuff
back.
Like that.
You're giving back.
So that's what it's all been. It's about being with my family and being able to, to pitch in here and there, where I can, and because I had a long career and because I was successful, and we saved our money really, really well. Like, it afforded me to be able to say, you know what, I just want to be here. I want to be home. I want to be with my family and be available for whatever. And so, so this year I'm kind of like at a period of where, I got to figure out something else to do. Because with the golf apparel brand being done and stuff, but we have 2 kids in college and our son. So for the next 5 years, it'll really be about my son and what he wants to do and how we can help him grow and mature and grow closer to him. All
the important stuff.
All the really important things.
So huge blessing. It's really exciting to see. Let's just see what happens. And so that's an exciting thing.
Well, one thing we've all got in common, we've all been to my house in Pebble Beach. But why don't you tell us about a unique experience that you had at the house in Pebble Beach? You had a visitor, didn't you?
Yeah. So my wife and I, we took another couple, a good buddy of mine that loves golf, just like I do, and so we all went for a walk, and we come back, and it's the evening, so the sun just starting to set, and we get to the house, and we're at the edge of the driveway, and we kind of see something like moving, like right at the front door, and we don't have flashlights or anything, and we're wondering, and one of us, I can't remember who it is, but one of us kind of steps a little closer, which a little nerve-wracking, and then we end up finding out it's a bobcat. I think it was a bobcat, and like just hanging out right at the front door. And so we didn't know what to do except to just yell at it and hope that it moved, because otherwise we didn't know what to do.
They can get they can get pretty big too.
So I'm sure. I know we have a picture somewhere.
Because you sent me a picture of it from the house. You said, "What kind of place is this?" Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Yeah, we just didn't know what to do, and we were like, "What? Do these things get aggressive?" I don't know. I mean, so
I've never seen a bobcat or a mountain lion at the house. So I'm glad you were there. I'm glad it
worked out for me. It's like playing at the
Broad Zoo. It was you rather than me. Well,
and we were there for maybe, I think, 3 days, I think it was. And so you better believe every time we stepped out of the door and came back that we took a look around to make sure there's nothing looming around there. So,
Derek, you got any closing questions for our guest?
Yes, I got a couple questions. Russ, how are you?
Okay. I'm great, man.
So, I want to circle back to something you said in the beginning of the interview, which was Billy asked a question about the juice and Barry Bonds. So, Barry Bonds, is Barry Bonds juice or not? I've heard other people say this, but would you second that sentiment? Or, in other words, he's a great player, and he would have been a great player even if he wasn't using the juice.
Well, he was a Hall of Famer before he used the juice.
Yeah, he's a great player before, and would have been a great player and a Hall of Famer without it. I mean, I think, I don't know how true this is or whatever, but I think by him, taking what he did, that kept him on the field. Okay. Because I believe like his knees were bad and and stuff like that. Like he wasn't able to play towards the latter part of his career. He wasn't able to play like every single day. But I think his knees were kind of shot a little bit and stuff. But so I believe it helped keep him on the field, which obviously allowed him to do what he did. But I mean, he would have been a Hall of Famer anyways.
Right.
Even if he just played sparingly or went to an American League team and was a DH or whatever. But so talent-wise, I mean, he's one of the best to ever play the game. And that it has nothing to do with steroids or anything like that. I mean, I understand why people hate him, or I understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame and all that stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, you can make an argument that he was already having a Hall of Fame career before this ever came about, or even from day one that he took anything. And so I think that's a valid argument that you can make. And so but I've always said with Hall of Fame, for these guys that have earned their way to Hall of Fame and have admitted to use steroids or caught use steroids or whatever, that maybe it's a case by case thing, but I think they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and to tell the story of their accolades on the field earn them a place in the Hall of Fame. However, this is what happened, and to be able to tell that story and then let people make their decision from there. I mean, on that particular person, but there's certain things that you do on the field, like Pete Rose, what he did in his playing career is Hall of Fame worthy for sure. And, but he also broke rules and stuff. And I understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame, but I think it would be great to, if he was in the Hall of Fame and then you just tell that story,
right.
And he deserves.
He has to talk about it.
He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for what he did as a player. what he did as a manager got him banned from the game, but that's different
Right.
from what he did as a player.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole gambling thing. I mean, that's kind of the first thing in spring training that they talk to us about is, you know, that's the rule that you just don't break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's
Stay
kind
away
of
from unsavory characters, I imagine.
Like
that's
like Billy
myself.
O'Connor.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then I have a couple more questions, but I'm going to ask
Okay.
this one next. So you retire. You know, the day you decide to retire, you retire. You're no longer playing baseball. You saved your money well. I heard you say that earlier.
Mhm.
What is the very first thing you do after retirement? Did you go on vacation?
Well, I'll say this: the day I retired, I was playing golf. So I had to clear waivers, right? I got released by the Dodgers, and I had to clear waivers. And so the day I was supposed to clear waivers, I purposely scheduled golf with a couple of my friends, so I wouldn't wake up and think about it, you know, because I had to stay ready just in case some other team, you know, let's just say a couple of their guys went down, they needed someone right away. Like, well, I had to keep that mindset of, you know,
okay.
I might get picked up, and so 12 noon my time, Arizona time, is if I didn't get picked up by then I cleared waivers. So I, like I said, so I was on the golf course. I woke up that morning. I will say this: I woke up that morning and I said, if I don't get picked up, I said I'm done.
Yeah.
And so my agents called me at noon. I don't know. I was at Kierland, the Kierland Golf Course here in Scottsdale, and they called me at noon and said, "You cleared waivers." And I said, "Are both of you on the line?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I'm done." And they said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." I said, I'm done. I'm positive." And they're like, "All right," you know. And they kept it short because they knew I was playing golf. And yeah, so I finished my round. I mean, so that was the very first thing that I did is I finished my round. I told my wife, you know, before I left, that's like, you know, I pretty much woke her up and just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know if I clear waivers, I'm done." And so, yeah, so that's the very first thing I did. But then after that, it was just, I think after I got home and kind of the whole thing sunk in, and, you know, with my wife and family, like I really felt like a huge weight was lifted off. Like I think probably since I was 15 years old,
Wow.
I just have been grinding and grinding to make it to the major leagues, and then made it, and then had a nice long career, and then to say that I was done, like it was just like a huge weight lifted off of just mostly the pressure that I put on myself, the pressure just in general that comes with professional sports, and it's just like, whew, you know, I could finally feel like I could just, you know, just exhale a deep breath and be like, wow, you know, that's a pretty crazy thing. But as far as let's see, we didn't do anything as a family, but I did take my brother as a kind of a thank you for all of his support over the years, and, you know, he's this special person to me. I took him to Bandon Dunes. If you don't know what Bandon Dunes is, it's in Oregon, and it's an unreal golf resort.
Oh, wow.
And so I took him there in August. I got released and cleared waivers like at the very beginning of May. And then in August, I took him to Bandon Dunes. So that was kind of the first special thing that I did, you know, as a thank you to my brother for all the years of support and love and all that. And so, but yeah, I will say that we took one vacation my whole career as a family.
Wow.
We took one vacation, and that was when our oldest daughter was a baby. We went with some friends to Kauai for like 4 days or 5 days, and yeah, so we took one vacation my whole career, and that was on purpose, you know, so we could save as much as we possibly could so that later in life we could enjoy. And we've done some amazing things, in these last 12 years.
Brilliant.
Okay, quick question for you, and thank you so much for being on, Russ. Really, it's been
this is great. My pleasure
for us, man. Now that you're playing more golf, now that you're retired, are you getting any better at the game? Does anybody ever get better at that game?
It doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it. But yeah, I'm a scratch golfer now, and it's taken quite a lot of years to get there. And but I will say, when I played for the Braves, we played an unbelievable amount of golf, and I got to play with guys that were not Glavine. Glavine signed with the Mets.
Oh, yeah,
so,
right. I mean,
but with Maddox and Smoltz especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I learned a ton from those guys, and the amount of golf we played, that helped me. That was in 2003, so that helped set the course for me to little by little, learn more and more about the game. But but in these last 12 years, I've worked really hard to get down to a scratch. I think I care too much about that than I should, but it definitely is a lot more fun when you shoot even or under par than it is when you shoot 80. So at this point in my golf career.
So I'm going to ask you then: are you going to try to make the Champions Tour in a year and a half or 2 years?
No, because that's a completely different level. I mean, that's
come on, Russ, you're a competitor.
Well, we'll see. I mean, let's see.
Take the juice. Take the juice. You'll be on tour.
So I'm 48, so I got a couple more years, but it depends. I mean, if I can take my game to the next level, it wouldn't hurt to try. If I thought that was something that I could actually do, then it wouldn't hurt to try, right? I mean, right now I'm doing everything I can to qualify for the USGA amateur events, and then see how far I can get there. And for an amateur, the ultimate is to win the U.S. amateur or the U.S. mid amateur, or even the U.S. senior amateur, and hopefully get an invite to the Masters. Yeah, and so I'd like, right now I'm working on getting my game to that level to where I could compete in those things in hopes to maybe actually win, one of those things. And so I have a lot to work on still, even though, I'm considered a scratch golfer. There's a huge mountain to climb to get to, like a +2 or +3 handicap. So that there's a big difference between those two golfers, and so that's what I'm working on now. And then, like I said, in the next 5 to 7 years, if I can get my game to the next level,
hey,
Russ, it might be at least worth a shot. So.
Hey, Russ, Frank just said to me off camera,
which I didn't. By the way. So whatever he says, he's full of crap. But go ahead.
He just said to me, if you try to go to the Masters, he would actually produce a reality TV show on your journey.
Yeah.
Well, I would love it. I mean, that would be
for sure.
That would be great.
Put it down. So. I'll be there. Russ, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks a lot.
It'll give us something to look forward to. Again, the All-Star Game is coming up in Los Angeles. It'll be a great time for a lot of the first-time players like yourself to appear at the All-Star Game. But also, I want to say, if you're looking for a college baseball team, you can't do any better than Tim Montez, head baseball coach at Ottawa University of Arizona, because you too may grow up to be Russ Ortiz.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. No, thanks for having me. This is a blast. Sorry about the the guy that pops up behind me every now and then. So
It's like your angel.
yeah.
It's like
The
your
house is haunted. That's all there is to it.
Billy's had a few of those guys that, in his past.
I see him in the morning, early, bright and early in the morning.
Take care, Russ. Thanks so much.
Take care, Russ.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. All right. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
I had a guy tell me one time after I was on about a 4-day load, and I started hearing whispers, underneath my bed, whispers. And I was in a bunk room at a firehouse. I went in and I heard whispers. And I said, this guy I knew was an old drunk. I says, come here, Abe. Have you ever heard whispers? He says, whispers, but that's nothing. He says, I often couldn't get out of bed for fear of stepping on the furry little bastards. So never mind seeing pink elephants. I've seen shit worse than that.
Oh,
Terrific guy, huh?
He was a good guy.
Really.
I mean, he won 21 games in the major leagues. That's
And his integrity, his character keeps coming through. And when he talks about it takes a village to be successful and everything, it's really inspiring. But I wanted to get to the senior side. We didn't have a chance. I wanted to ask him, did you ever throw at a guy? Did you ever use any juice? Because Maloney, when we had Jim Maloney,
he threw
we
a
had
lot
Jim
of them.
Maloney on.
He threw a lot of them.
I thought that was terrific. He said, well, when I needed it, I'd go to the hat.
That's one of your favorite segments, huh?
Yeah. Because he was so,
Yeah.
he gave us, but he was terrific. I mean, don't get me wrong. And his approach to the game is a lot different than Jim Maloney's, I think. But I love Maloney because I like that.
I did want to ask him a question, though Frank was tapping the watch. I wanted to ask him, he mentioned something about the foundation of pitching.
Yeah.
Be curious to hear what that is next time we have him.
Next time we have him on, we'll ask him.
Yeah, it was a great guest, Frank. You're a terrific guest.
Well, thanks.
Good guy.
Well, we'll be back next week with more, with 103, 102, whatever this is, 102, 103, whatever. We'll be back with the next 100.
The next 100. And the next 100 years. You're going to be around another 100 years, too, so you don't have to worry about this.
Well,
We'll
probably maybe.
We'll have 20,000 in the bank. I love when he wants to improve on being a scratch golfer.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to hit a bucket on the range. And that's a tight track for me, the range. I'm trying to get the ball out there.
Well,
amazing.
Say goodbye, Billy.
Take it easy, fellas.
Say goodnight,
Thanks very
Derek.
much for tuning in.
Adios.
Adios.
Adios. Be well.
Next week's guest, Broadway musical star of Hair, lead singer of the Blues Magoos, Pepe Castro.
We'll see you next week.